Right. Good afternoon, everyone. We'll call the meeting to order. The roll call.
Emmanuel Garcia, student member.
Here.
Scott Vanderwill.
Here.
Ryan McCray.
Here.
Tanya Raby.
Here.
Rob Johnson.
Here.
Peter Henderson.
Here.
Sonia Del Rio.
Here.
We have 6 out of 10 voting board members present, which means we do have a quorum. Chairperson Raby, we have been advised by voting member Danielle Stanley that she is unable to get to meet with us in person because of the extreme weather conditions and flash flooding that is prohibiting her ability to get here. We will need a motion and a second and a vote to admit her to participate in the meeting remotely.
A motion.
It's been moved by Peter Henderson. Is there a second?
I second.
It's been moved by Peter Henderson, seconded by Ryan McCray, that CAB member Danielle Stanley be admitted into the meeting remotely based on her inability to be here in person due to extreme weather conditions and flash flooding. We'll take a roll call vote. Scott Vanderwill.
Yay.
Ryan McCray.
Yes.
Chairperson Raby.
Yes.
Vice Chairperson Johnson.
Aye.
Peter Henderson.
Yes.
Sonia Del Rio.
Yes.
The vote carries. And I would also advise that we have our other student member, Aiden Keith, joining us remotely. Welcome, Aiden, and welcome, Danielle.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Greenlee, are there any public comments today?
We have received no requests for public comments.
Great. I get a motion to approve the minutes from the last board meeting held on May 16, 2025.
A motion.
Any seconds?
I second.
It's been moved by Peter Henderson, seconded by Ryan McCray, that the minutes from May 16, 2025 be approved. We'll take a roll call vote. Scott Vanderwill.
Yes.
Ryan McCray.
Yes.
Chairperson Raby.
Yes.
Vice Chairperson Johnson.
Aye.
Peter Henderson.
Yes.
Sonia Del Rio.
Yes.
Danielle Stanley.
Yes.
The motion passes.
Great. All right. Next on the agenda is a working session where we will get a briefing on ridership from our Chief of Planning and Innovations Officer, Molly Poppy, assisted by
Scott Wainwright, Director Ridership Analysis and Reporting.
All right. Good afternoon. How is
Afternoon.
today? So as Georgette said, I'm Molly Poppy. Our team is responsible for ridership analysis. And so we wanted to take this opportunity to brief you all on current ridership results through about the first half of the year, and where we are seeing really strong ridership trends, where we're having maybe not the best ridership trends. And then we're also going to talk through some customer segmentation to give you guys a little bit of insight on how we try to think about marketing and rider engagement, and want to make sure that we get your feedback throughout. So this is a working session. Raise questions throughout, ask me questions throughout, but we'll also maintain time at the end for any other feedback and thoughts that you all have. Okay, so first, let's just start with where we are overall trends year over year. This is 2024 and 2025 ridership trends. The blue with the black, that is where we are from a current ridership trend. These are weekly ridership averages. So what you can see here is that we are at 71% of 2019 levels, which represents a 4% year over year growth. We had really strong ridership growth in 2024, and in 2025 we do still see strong growth at 4% year over year, but we do hope that as we get further into the summer and especially the fall, which as you can see if you look further out around week 35 to about week 42, the fall months tend to be our highest ridership months, so we want to continue to see that growth at 71% of.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Vita, do you have the slides?
Oh, did I not share? That's on me. Vita, sorry, that's on me. Well, it was only one, yeah, it wasn't too bad. It was only one slide in. Now I'm actually sharing. Okay. Sorry, Vita. So what we are tracking though is as we look at overall ridership trends and as we compare to our sort of partners and our peers nationally, we do see that we have reached consistently over the last couple of weeks. We are the second largest ridership, second overall highest ridership transit agency in the country. New York City is ahead of us. Previously, LA was leading us for a while, but we have seen in recent months we've overtaken LA and that we are the second highest ridership transit agency in the country, which is very exciting for us and good for us to continue to see that we are leading. People ever bypass New York, just given the size of New York and what's going on in New York, but you know, we'll train. That would be that's the long-term goal is that we overtake New York. So from an overall ridership trend by mode, just looking at the last 3 months of April, May, and June, what we see here is that rail is really showing strong performance at 7% year-over-year growth. This is comparing the April, May, June of 25 to the same months in 24. What we had previously seen in prior years of COVID is since COVID is that bus was really driving a lot of our growth. We were seeing a lot more growth on bus than we were on rail. Now what we're really seeing today is rail is showing strong performance. We think that is due in part to there's been more return to office in 25 than 24, and rail does tend to be a little stronger performer in downtown ridership and taking more people to downtown where we know a lot of the return to office has happened. Rail also continues to benefit. A lot of our special event ridership does come on rail. We do have some performance of special events on bus, but it really primarily is rail. And then looking by day types, this is combined all modes. For day type, so weekday, not unsurprising, there's more days, there's more service. We do see larger overall ridership on our weekdays, Monday through Friday. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday are our highest ridership days. But when you start to look to Saturdays and Sundays, what we do see here is they are showing more overall growth. The ridership is not as high, but the growth is better. And this has been a trend that we've seen since COVID is Saturdays and Sundays have been performing much better as a percentage of pre-COVID ridership levels compared to weekdays. We're more in the 80s and 90s for Saturday and Sunday ridership retention compared to 2019, where when you look at weekdays, it is more in that 70%. Okay, and then some signature investments that we did in 25 that we want to report out on is the Frequent Bus Network. So in March of this year, we announced the Frequent Bus Network, which is 10 minutes or better service all day, every day. So from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. on weekdays and 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. on weekends. There's a total of 20 routes as part of the first round of the Frequent Bus Network. And we launched 8 routes in March. So we're launching the whole Frequent Network over the entire year. We did 8 routes primarily on the south side in March. And then we had another round of 4 routes go in June. So what we are looking at is we are trying to track and understand how are the combined Frequent Network routes performing relative to the system. Are we seeing stronger ridership growth on the Frequent Network routes relative to the system? And what we are seeing for both tranches of Frequent Network routes that we've added, we are seeing stronger ridership performance on those routes that got increased service relative to the rest of the system. There's some puts and takes in there that I'll get into in the next slide on sort of which routes are up, which routes are even down. So this first slide here, this is all 8 routes that had additional service added in March. And what you can see here is Jeffrey Jump and Blue Islands. Those are performing well above the system, even with 22% of ridership growth compared to last year in that same time frame. Jeffrey Jump got some of the most increases in service as part of the Frequent Network. So the Jeffrey Jump saw about a 30% increase in service on the weekends and a 25%, I think 30% also on weekdays. So it saw some really strong ridership or service growth weekends and weekdays. And that is what is driving a lot of that performance on the J14. But also on Blue Island saw a significant increase in weekend service, and that is also helping to drive that ridership growth. As we go down the list that we have here, some of these routes already had really strong, really close to 10 minutes or better. And so when we did add service for the frequent network to get to 10 minutes, you would find that some of those increases came maybe early in the morning, later at night, sometimes during the weekends or on in the midday. It was not sort of these big jumps like what we saw on Jeffrey Jump and Blue Island. So that's where, you know, the ridership doesn't necessarily get as high of an overall performance. On 79th Street specifically, I do want to call this out. So 79th Street, it is one of our highest ridership routes in the entire system. When you think about our major ridership routes, you should think about it as 79th Street, 66 Chicago, Ashland, and Halsted. Those are kind of our highest ridership routes. And 79th Street specifically, what we are seeing on 79th Street is we are seeing a decline in ridership on 79th Street this year relative to last year. 79th Street is not alone in this. We are seeing this to be true across a fair amount of our bus routes on the south side that are feeders into the green and red line. And then we're also seeing that the green and red line ridership is not performing as well as we'd like it to. And in some scenarios, we are seeing a slight decline. There's a couple different things that we are attributing that to. There's some security concerns that we know is happening globally, not just on transit, but there's been some security concerns that we've heard happening in the community that may be depressing some of that ridership. That's not the most satisfactory answer. It's certainly not the satisfactory answer that I want to hear. So we're digging into that further, and we continue to look at what we think is happening there. But I do just want to point out that it's not just 79th Street. We're kind of seeing it on routes across that community area.
Would you say that,
Can you just quickly remind me,
Yeah.
what constitutes a frequent network?
Yeah, so we identified 20 routes throughout the entire system, and we looked at overall spacing. So we were trying to achieve somewhere between 1.5 miles to a 2 mile spacing with the frequent network route. So roughly every 1.5 miles to 2 miles, you will have a service that has 10 minutes or better service, a route that has 10 minutes or better service. And then we also looked at coverage too. So 34 South Michigan is a perfect example. It currently serves Altgeld Gardens up to 95th Street. And so we also were looking for where do we start to achieve that coverage to provide as much frequent service throughout the community. So we also tried to look a little bit at coverage. And so you should think about it as we looked at the grid. There's about 1.5 miles to 2 mile spacing, plus there's a couple filler-ins, if you will, with like 60. Blue Island's a good example. 34 South Michigan are two that are more coverage based. They don't sort of perfectly fit into that 1/2 mile, 2 mile radius.
Thank you.
There was another question. Chairperson Raby?
yes, I was going to ask a little bit more about 79th in comparison to some of the other routes. Just some of that those issues that are happening. Would you say that 79th Street is probably one of the most concerning routes out of that group of routes that has been impacted in that way?
I would say it's concerning just in the sense that it's such an important route for us and it carries so many people. Is when you look at a route, that is what we would call a small feeder route. It could have lower ridership, but that might be, 200, 300 less riders, where when we're looking at 79th, this is 83,000 fewer riders in 3 months. So that's where it does become more of a conversation for us. So, I don't want to say that we found a silver bullet. And I think what we've learned since COVID is mobility patterns are changing, and they're probably changing a lot more just regularly throughout people's lives than they were sort of pre-COVID. Everyone was kind of more set in their ways pre-COVID. I think what we've learned in time is flexibility and mobility patterns are really going to be more agile and ever evolving. And so what I would also say as well is we know security is part of it, but we also know they're just changing. They're changing how they get around. I think another good example is student ridership is not back near pre-COVID levels, but we know students are in school. We know students are going back. What we see there is they're not quite at pre-COVID levels. And we think that's, for kids that are in high school or middle school or elementary school, their parents may have more flexibility to take them to school now where they didn't have that flexibility before. And so that might be why we see a little less ridership for students on public transit. divvy and scooters have also increased in their overall usage and their penetration across the city. So we're also seeing that increase as well. So I would say there's a lot of different sort of things moving throughout the system. Scott, is there anything else you want to add?
Yeah, I was just trying to see like how the 79 is really in terms of percentage. Is it that different than in some of these other routes? And it's not. And on a percentage basis, it's kind of similar to what is happening on a lot of the other routes in that area. As Molly said, I think it's just concerning because of the sheer size of it. It's so much larger. It's one of our largest routes. So the fact that it's going through it, it's just from that standpoint, it does make it a little bit more concerning.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah.
I know this is like, I don't necessarily expect an answer or but I am interested kind of where do those trips go, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is it like a mode shift? Are they just not there anymore?
That is one of the things that, that is one of the things that's a sort of continued analysis that we want to do, particularly as Molly said before too, like that we've noticed that the Dan Ryan branch has been losing some ridership. So what we want to do is kind of parse that out and see if if we're just losing rides that are connecting to the Dan Ryan branch, or are these rides that are just staying on 79th and just, going back and forth on 79th only, or is it the connection to the Dan Ryan that's the problem? Because then maybe the fix to the 79th isn't the 79th, it's the fix to the Dan Ryan branch, right? So that is one of the things that we are looking into now. We just haven't gotten too deep into that yet to be able to report anything on that.
Just to piggyback on Rob's question a little bit, I guess expanding it out a little bit more and kind of like thinking about some of the other factors that could be leading to the decline, like thinking about like access to opportunities and all of that, and just how a lot of that has been on a decline, especially folks who might be trying to access them from the south side. Like, have you all, or do you have the capacity to do a deeper dive into kind of like looking into those types of factors to help give a little bit more of a broader explanation as to why this is occurring?
Yeah, I don't have economists on staff that can do some of that work. We have, and it's no short sell to Scott, because Scott and his team are wonderful and they do a lot of analysis. I think what we'll start to look at as we continue to try to dig in on this is we are going to look at other sort of mode shift. And I think that will be a good indicator to us because that's something we are more familiar with. And so we'll start to look at other data sources to see, are we still seeing people move throughout the corridor? What's happening throughout the corridor? And we do have a strong relationship with the Department of Planning and Development at the city, where we talk with them regularly about what they're seeing, where they're trying to develop, where they're pushing for various changes. So that will also be part of it as well. We do have some work that we're planning to do with them along Green Line South, and we've been talking a lot about Green Line South as an area we'd want to see some COD development. So that's also part of this conversation as well.
Okay. And one more question.
No, absolutely, please.
You brought up TOD.
Yeah.
Just thinking about like the TIF and everything that is along Red Line South, just the opportunities that exist for TOD development. Is that also, I know this is probably going beyond the scope of this conversation, but just wondering if that, those kinds of factors to help increase ridership on Red Line South, and then also the 79 and other routes that are connected to it. Like just wondering like what those conversations are like, and have any insights to share? Yeah, so for the Red Line extension that's going down to 130th from 95th Street, there is going to be transit-oriented development, transit supportive development is part of that overall work and investment strategy. There are limitations of how you can use specifically transit TIF funding to pay for certain things. So there are limitations there, but we have other funding stacks that we do utilize, and you can use traditional TIF, if you will, for some of those things. So that's absolutely part of the conversation. We also have a 95th Street TOD plan that we have launched, and that was passed by
the city's plan commission in February that does have conversations about development strategies that we would try to do along, there's about 6 to 9 parcels that we own as well as parcels that the city owns. And so we are looking at what are those development opportunities as well. So I would say like in the traditional RPM transit TIF, that funding it can be used for some, but it's not really a good vehicle for transit-oriented development, but the city does have other good vehicles that we've been able to utilize with the way that they've done some zoning changes and other funding that is available through the city to drive TOD. And I think 95th Street is a good example of what you'll start to see of how we are trying to work together and think sort of differently about TOD, because there is, sort of prior conversations around TOD sometimes have been around, okay, we have certain requirements from the FTA, from the Federal Transit Administration about how we can develop land. And so we're also thinking through making changes to that or making changes to our own policies that are conform with the FTA to try to allow us more flexibility, because sometimes it kind of has the FTA tends to lean towards maximizing profit for TOD, and that is not the E in TOD, equitable transit-oriented development. And so we've been trying to work through that. And I think 95th Street you'll see is kind of that first step. But if you look at like RPM, for example, that we did just open those 4 stations, there is strong plans around transit-supported development in TOD there that the city is working to upzone in some areas around where recent stations have opened to do TOD. And that may be a little bit more of that more traditional. There is ETOD in that, but that'll be a little bit more of that traditional, maximizing revenue.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, the next 4 routes that went live this summer, they went live in June, are the 66 Chicago, the 20 Madison, the 49 Western, and the 4 Cottage Grove. So following on the similar trend that we talked about around 79th, Cottage Grove, what we also see here, it is seeing a slight decline. It's 6,000 riders. It's not the 83,000 that we saw in the 79th, but it still kind of falls within that overall trend that we've seen around what's happening on the south side. And we are seeing the summer routes that went into effect. They are growing a little bit above system overall percentages. I would just note, this is a month's worth of data. It's can be directional, but it's probably not fully indicative of what's happening. And then for the rest of the year, what we will see is we will have another 4 routes going live in the summer. And then the final 4 routes as part of the 20 route Frequent Plus network going live in the winter. And then if there's additional funding from Springfield, we would look to expand the frequent network to more than 40 routes would be the general plan. So you would have a frequent network route every mile, which would put 93% of the service area within about 10-minute walk of a frequent network. Okay. The last item that I just want to update you all on before I turn it over to Scott. So we launched recently the Regional Day Pass, which is a partnership with CTA, Metra, and PACE to provide reduced one-day ridership on CTA, Metra, and PACE. And we started sales on the 21st, I think. Something like
20th,
that.
I think.
20th, on the 20th. And what we've seen as we progress over the about a month, the 4-week period, 5-week period that we've seen this live, we've seen consistent growth in the use of the Regional Day Pass and purchase of the Regional Day Pass. Primarily where we're seeing Regional Day Pass usage has been on a lot of downtown bus routes and downtown like loop rail routes. So we're seeing it on the 151, the 124. We're also seeing it on the 120 and the 121, which is a good indicator for us of other service investments that we've done, because we, as part of the work that we did, this spring, we also added more service to the 120 and the 121. Northwestern Hospital System stopped running their private shuttle service, and we happily raised our hand and said, absolutely, we will take all of your riders on your private shuttle service and we will put them on CTA. And so we made a couple tweaks to our existing 120 and 121 routes. We added a little bit more service, changed a few bus stops around, and what we've seen is the 120 and 121 have more than doubled their ridership since we made that change, and we are now seeing the pass helping to drive some of that ridership. So it's just a good example of we are trying to be a little bit opportunistic, to be frank, of when we know somebody's thinking about, turning down their private shuttle service. We are very quick to raise our hand and very quick to talk with them about what they need and what resources that they're looking for ridership. And then we try to accommodate that with our existing service. And so that's been a good way that we've been trying to tack in more to how people are getting to the office. Any questions on ridership before I turn it over to Scott on customer segmentation?
I had a question about the day pass.
Yeah.
Is the day pass, is the target for that locals or is it, folks that are visiting for the day? And, I'm just trying to understand what who the target market is.
Yeah, so we currently have a regional Connect Pass that is a 30-day discount. So if you're a Metro monthly holder and a 30-day, then you can get a reduced CTA Pays 30-day. So the target for that is definitely your traditional commuters that come into the office 4 or 5 days a week. The regional day pass is way more targeted to people who do weekend travel, who come in from the suburbs for the weekend or vice versa, that come, like myself, who travels on the weekends to go see family in the suburbs. So that's more of the target market for the regional day pass. But what Metro also sees as well, which is similar to the trends we're seeing, people are not riding 5 days a week like they used to. They're sort of riding Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And so what we also see is a regional day pass is getting picked up by those folks who a monthly and a 30-day maybe doesn't make sense for them because of how much they're commuting, but a regional day pass does make sense for them. So it's a both and, Katanya, sorry.
It's okay.
I'll just add to that. Molly mentioned that we've seen it on some of these downtown stations so far. A couple of the other ones that were sort of interesting that fell down a little bit further down the list were up at Addison on the Cubs Red Line station. So maybe some of that infrequent type customer there, as well as Cermak Chinatown, again, kind of a popular tourist area.
Yeah.
And then also the 124 Navy Pier route. So again, some of these sort of more tourist one-off kind of type services. So.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Right. I will let you drive.
Sure. Okay. Great. So Molly asked me to talk a little bit about a project that we've been working on for last year and really a little bit further back than that, but which is our customer segmentation data. We've done a refresh on that and maybe you haven't heard that before. So just to describe that a little bit to you, what that is we use machine learning and artificial intelligence to sort of group our customers into similar behaviors, groups of similar behaviors. And so things like how often do they ride? What time of day do they ride? Are they more of a bus or a rail customer? How likely are they to transfer? Either very likely or, very unlikely to transfer. Try to just group these people together. And that allows us to sort of just better understand how people are using the system. And then we can be a little bit more intelligent on decisions around service and changes and policy changes. And also, in terms of our marketing and our marketing messages and the marketing vehicles, different people with different behaviors are going to react very differently to different messages. So that's really where we want to take this. And so we've kind of rebuilt, we had sort of launched this just prior to COVID. Then COVID hit, and then that kind of changed how everybody was behaving. And so we've been reporting on those groups all this time, and it was like the system was changing so rapidly, it really wasn't worth redoing at that time. Things are stabilizing a little bit more now. So this was a good opportunity and a good time to sort of relook and redo that sort of type of analysis and regroup people based on their behaviors. So we've done that. And I think the other big thing is that we're trying to build out a little bit more on the back end so that we can be a little bit more responsive to follow-up questions. And then if we were able to do some kind of a change, can we measure that change a little bit more effectively so that we can be a little bit smarter about how we direct those resources? So there's also the sort of the architecture and the data architecture on the backside of that. So what changed between what we did just before COVID and the one that we've been working on in the last year? Well, we had 18 segments before, in the original version, and we had forced breakouts of groups like the free seniors, the free disabled, and students. And our folks here, higher ups, wanted us to basically sort of strip that away and let those people fall into the regular buckets just the same as everybody else, that they wouldn't be parsed out. So that was one thing that we did. And then, so these segments were all defined purely based on their behavior, right? So we went from 18 and we went up to 23 segments. So we've actually increased that number. The goal was to actually make it smaller. But because we're following the data, right? We're using the artificial intelligence and the machine learning to tell us what the groups look like. We have to follow the data from that standpoint. And the data told us that there's actually 23 distinct groups, not 18. So the balance to that is that we also created 8 macro clusters, we're calling them, where we kind of grouped the 23 into 8 groups where it's a little bit easier to manage, within the 8 or so. They're within the 23, there's some similarities, right? They're a little bit different, but they're also, within that there can be a little bit of similarities. So we took those 23 and we grouped them into 8 macro clusters that we call them. And then we came up with some much more simplified names on these things. I think it was very difficult to convey what these things were and what these groups were under the old naming convention. So we've tried to really simplify the naming, and we'll look at that in a second. A couple of things that kind of happened in there. We sort of saw that the AM, rush customers or just our rush hour customers, which we just treated as one group before, we found there are some people who ride just in the AM peak. We found that there are some people who ride in just the PM peak. And that's kind of different than it was pre-COVID. So we were able to break those people out. And then additionally, we found that, what we would normally just call off-peak riders, which is people who are not riding during the rush hours, we found that there was a pretty good chunk of people who ride just during the midday. And that turned out to be sort of our more vulnerable populations that were riding in the midday. So we were able to sort of break them out as well as kind of into their own group. Then we were also able to include PACE ridership into this, and their transfer activity all went into this as well, which was different than what we had before. So these are the different features that we used, that we allowed the machine learning and artificial intelligence to group the things on. So cadence, which is kind of our frequency. So how many days did they ride in a 4-week period? And then we also looked at things like how many days did they ride? And then were those days all bunched together? Were they kind of consecutive, or were they spread out over that time period, right? If you only rode 3 days, maybe you rode 3 straight days, or maybe you rode only on Saturdays or something like that, right? So there's a little bit of a difference there. And then we have time of day, as I mentioned, the percentage of AM peak, percentage PM peak, midday weekend, the bus and rail splits, and then also the transfers.
And then because evening also would be considered off-peak. I think
We looked at evening, we did. We broke that out. And one of the things I didn't mention before is we ran thousands of iterations, literally thousands of iterations. And we came up with, one of the things we tested was evening. We tried to break that out to see if that would actually, call itself out as a separate group. That group did not separate itself out in a significant way, the way that these other groups did. So we tried and let the data tell us where to go. And the data told us that there was not an evening specific group. So we did not end up with an evening specific cluster.
I like what you said on page 10 as well, is like how you calibrated and took those things out. I also thought as well, especially like with the frequent network looking around, when the Cubs gave in, look how many people packed Addison on the red line, and with all of those bus routes around there, looking how that ridership happens, because it's not that much, especially when games are not happening, but when games are happening, what's the best way to get to Wrigley Field? What's the best way to get home?
Yeah, and we've done some really neat things in there around that one, particularly like, down to the level of times of the Cubs games, there's some days where people tend to linger around and spend some time celebrating the Cubs after the game. And then there's other days where they go directly home.
We did, correct.
Right? And it's straight home. And so there's different people who exhibit those different behaviors. There'll be very different marketing messages to those types of people, right? One is like, get in, get out, get home as fast as you can and go to work. And then other people is like, come down and enjoy yourself and then go home safely on CTA, right? Those are very different ways of addressing people to increase the ridership, but it's, we can potentially target that, right? So what I want to do here, these are the 23 different groups that I had mentioned. And so what I want to do first off is just kind of describe some of these to you. These are not the simplified names. These are the sort of elongated names that they're very sort of descriptive of what they are. So like the first one is like the infrequent customer that rides anytime, every day, mixed mode, one seat. They only take one seat. They don't transfer to another bus or train on their particular journey. They're just in on one train and back on the other train or bus. The one next to that would be infrequent anytime, weekday instead of every day, that they are weekday specific. Mixed mode, they take both bus and rail and transfer. They have a much higher propensity to transfer compared to other people. So that sort of idea propels itself all the way through these other 23. I don't need to go through and read all 23 to you.
But you can think of
Guys.
where, as you go around this circle, 3% is this infrequent anytime, every day, mixed one seat, and then 4% is this infrequent anytime. So if you really do want to start to dig in, like we have, you can sort of go around the circles clockwise.
Yeah, and there's some neat ones that I do definitely want to highlight for you. I think they're kind of interesting. It'll be silly to talk about all these potential insights, not share any with you, right? But we have two different splits here on these circles. One is the account share, and then the other is the ride share. So the green circles here tend to be our more frequent accounts. And so you can see that the split on the accounts is roughly 60-40 between green and not green. Let's just say I'm a little colorblind, so I couldn't even tell you.
You're
what
right.
it is.
You got it.
Right. Green and not green over here. It's about 60-40. But then you look at the ridership share over on the right-hand side, and the green circles represent almost 75% of the circle, while the infrequent accounts only account for about 25% of the ridership. So you can see just how outsized and how some accounts add way more rides to the system than other accounts do. And to that point, which is kind of neat, there's some accounts here. If we look at the ridership circle that are at 16 and 17%, I thought it might just be worth calling those out. So those end up being this super frequent, anytime, everyday bus transfer group. And the one right next to it here, the super frequent, anytime, everyday, mixed mode transfer. So they also take bus and rail. So what's interesting is we don't have one of these super frequent or super high ridership ones that's just rail. It's either they take only bus or they take bus and rail. It's not that they only take rail and that they end up in this really super frequent thing. So I think that's a neat little insight. And then I'd also add that their accounts over here are in these slips here. This is their accounts. They're at 6% each. So you've got 6% of the accounts for this one, 6% of the accounts, the other one. So that's 12% of the accounts plus the 16 and 17%. That's 33% of the ridership. So in our system, 12% of our customers account for almost a third of our ridership. These are super valuable customers in terms of our ridership. Our marketing and our messaging to these people could be very different than people who ride only on the weekends, et cetera, right? Like we might want to do things more like, thank you for being such a valuable customer. How can we, we're going to reward you for being such a great customer, and tell your friends whatever and encourage them to be that way. Maybe these are people we can ask to influence other people a little bit more, right? So there's just some different things we can do with them. The other one I would just point out here that's kind of neat are these 4 and 5 percentages over here. they're kind of our larger account groups of, in terms of accounts, they're 4 and 5%. These people happen to be the infrequent weekend rail 1 seat. These are kind of like your concert goers, or maybe they're just,
They're fun
as
people.
Molly
They're
said,
fun.
they're fun people. They're just
Fun.
coming and
Not
using the
me,
system.
not me. I sit in the,
To come downtown and just, show up and enjoy the sights and scenes on the weekends only. And they can just do it on 1 seat on rail, right? They don't even have to transfer. They're easy in, easy out. So there's quite a bit of them, that's 5% of all the people, but they're over here in terms of the ridership. They only actually account for 1% of the ridership. So, we get to then play some games in terms of like, well, who would we try to maybe market a little bit more to? Could we get somebody to move into being a more regular customer and a more frequent customer with a message? Or could we get this one person to just come downtown one more time? Or could we say, hey, you've used this on the weekends to have fun. Make sure that you use this to come to work as well. And, it's a cheap way to get to work as well. We're really good for that. So it's a different message that could be conveyed there. So.
I just had one question. So I wonder if you looked at directionality. So if there was a significant difference between people who took, bus to a train versus train to a bus. I suppose like if it's an everyday occurrence, you're probably doing it both directions. But in my experience, it's a lot easier to to do a transfer from a bus to a train, right? Because trains tend to be more frequent. There's not as much, there's no traffic, right? So I've found that direction, it tends to be easier than the other. So I wonder if you've noticed any trends based on the directionality of the transfer.
That's not something we have noticed yet to this point. We haven't looked for that. It's a great insight and one we'll certainly try to investigate and see. I do wonder if that has something to do with some of this AM versus PM only kind of a thing, or we do know that some people take us to a special event in one direction and not the other direction. And so there may be something to what you're saying behind all of that has gotten some interest before that we haven't been able to get to yet. But I think that's a pretty valuable insight and one definitely worth taking a look at.
One question I have about those frequent riders and kind of like incentivizing them, like, have you all considered different types of incentives that might be effective to kind of like encourage them to ride more or be influencers? Like maybe, 20 rides, you get 1 free. I don't know, that might be pushing it, but just like anything comes to mind for getting that.
yeah, I mean, the pass products are a little bit of that incentive, right? If you're somebody who rides regularly, if you do a 30-day pass product is $75 and a 7-day is 20. And so those actually do kind of operate as like a BOGO, if you will, type of idea. And so I would say the passes are one of those, but beyond that, that's what we really started to think about is what are those incentive packages? And it's probably a different incentive, right? For somebody who loves to ride us, uses us all the time, the incentive is going to be very different for them versus the folks that we're trying to think about. You use us for a special event. How do we make sure we get you on both rides of that special event? How do we make sure that we, maybe as Scott mentioned, push you to take a ride during the week or push you to take more rides? I think the other piece of this too is, oftentimes what we hear sort of externally from folks is they really calibrate towards, you need to get special event riders, like you need to get more special event riders. And I think what you can see here is the special event riders, they're a small group overall, and they're a small generator of rides. And it's not to say that we shouldn't think about them. It's not to say that we shouldn't provide good ridership for special or good service for special events and that we shouldn't try to invest there. But I think it's also a really important point for us to think about is when we say we're making investments in Frequent Network, that is an investment very much in these frequent riders. That is a very much an investment that goes straight towards those folks that maybe they ride us anyways, but saying, hey, it's going to be 10 minutes. And so I think getting to your point is something that maybe makes that transfer from bus to rail faster. faster or that rail to bus transfer better. And so I also think that there's something that as we start to message and talk about it, when we talk about some of our investments that we're doing and people ask, well, what new rider are you getting off the street to do this? And it's sort of the same, it's also the conversation of an investment today in our current service and an investment today in somebody who's already riding us is just as good as a down payment as trying to get, one ride out of an infrequent rider. So it really is kind of how we're trying to think through where we target our resources and where we target our message and what should be realistic for how many more rides you can or cannot.
Piggybacking off of the incentives and promotions to increase ridership, when I traveled to LA last month for a half marathon, they just opened up a new line of transit. And so that whole weekend, all public transportation was free to encourage ridership. As we are opening up and having ribbon cutting ceremonies, is that a conversation that's taking place to promote ridership when there is a special occasion like an opening of a new line?
I don't have, we don't have any new lines opening just yet. I think we were actually supposed to get this Olympics, right? That LA is doing. Was this the Chicago Olympics that we were going after? Am I right, Rob? I think so. So, it was Brazil. Okay, so it was a while ago. But LA's got lovely money flowing into their transit agency with the Olympics coming and US World Cup. I am not jealous at all of that money. But you are hitting on something I think that's really important is people that come to the city and want to celebrate whatever activity they're doing, the half marathon, anything, we need to find ways for transit to be part of that celebration. And so we do have some special fare cards that we've been launching. We do one, I don't know, Danielle, if you're running in the marathon, the Bank of America marathon, but we do a marathon card as part of Ventra every year. So we do kind of that celebratory, you have this little takeaway, a branded Ventra card that has marathon iconography on it. So I do think that there's definitely more opportunities that we can think through that. We did that a little bit with RPM, the stations that opened on Monday, and we'll definitely do something for Red Line Extension when that opens in 4 years.
I do appreciate the pride and
the pride cards,
the Juneteenth, like there was a couple of really cool options there. So that was good.
Yeah, we did Pride, we did Black History Month, we did AA, NHPI, Hispanic Heritage Month, and then we've done Bank of America. We did St. Patty's Day because St. Patty's Day is actually one of our really high ridership days. Chicagoans do love their St. Patty's Day. So we do some of those and those have been successful for us in getting that kind of fun takeaway.
Okay, so I'm just continuing here. So I mentioned before we had the 23 clusters, which were very detailed in those names, not very simple. And I said one of the big changes we made was that we simplified the names by collapsing the 23, even though the ones that are 23, there's some similarities there. So this is those 8 macro clusters with the simplified names. We have that interesting same split there between the accounts and the rides, so you can just see that there's much fewer lines up there. But we got together with our marketing group and our customer experience group, and we kind of came up with this sort of a very different sort of sounding type name to these groups. So sort of more actively sounding, right? Like I ride transit sometimes. I only ride on the weekend. I ride for just one weekend. I ride a lot and I transfer. I ride infrequently, but at very specific times. So like that midday one that I talked about, we go back and find that one in there somewhere in the 23, but that midday one would fall in here in that infrequent one, but at specific times. I ride for a short time. Those are like your Lollapalooza people who come in from the suburbs or whatever. They hit us for 3 days and then they're gone, right? We don't see them again until next summer or maybe another event at some other point. But so these are the more sort of simplified names, the ones that we probably plan on doing maybe some more external communications on with these, because these are just a little bit more easy to understand for people as we talk, and especially for you folks and our other boards, et cetera, that we may be reporting things at this level, because it's just a little bit more manageable. Yeah. I think it's a little more tangible for people. And then my last slide on this is to just talk about, we've talked about a lot about what we're trying to do with this stuff, but this just kind of wraps that up a little bit. But, we really want to track what behaviors are changing and where. And also one thing we haven't talked about is, what customers have actually stopped using us. And are there ways that we can reach out to them and to say, hey, we lost you there. Can you tell us what's going on, or can we offer you something to incentivize you to come back? And we can also try to look at the data and say, hey, this is the kind of behavior people have right before they leave us. So maybe there's a reach out that we can do before they actually leave us. And then maybe it's harder to get them back after that point, that we notice that they're exhibiting some behavior that predicts that they're going to leave, and maybe we can intervene before they actually leave. So I think those are the big ones. I guess the other thing I would just say is that we want to look at it at a route level, line level. Are there certain routes or lines that have more of one type of customer than another? And does that affect or influence us on, when we're doing service changes? Is there an additional consideration that we need to make on a particular service change, given the overall nature of that route and the people who are out there? So, and then lastly, on the marketing stuff, again, as I mentioned several times, there's, different ways of reaching different people. Maybe certain mediums are better at reaching people with different messages than others. And our ability to analyze those things and kind of track those things is going to be really key for us to be able to be, effective in doing that. And so I'll turn it over to Molly.
Yeah, I think we covered a lot of this marketing already with all the questions and sort of what we discussed. So I'm not going to spend too much time here, but we've started to think through, okay, who are these folks? What's the marketing goal around them? What's a super rider marketing goal versus that sort of short-term infrequent? And we've really started to cluster these folks even further. And what's that strategy? How do we spend our time? And what type of messages do we use? So we've looked at different content, different types of channels that we look at, right? It makes sense to use in-home marketing to get those frequent riders and super riders, but you wouldn't use marketing that's on the system to get the short-term riders, because they're probably not going to see it because they're not on the system regularly. So you would do other type of targeted, probably paid digital. So that's how we've really started to think about how we use this. And I know this was kind of, I think this is my last slide. Yeah, I know this was kind of a dense presentation and sort of a lot of different aspects of how we're thinking about ridership and how we're starting to cluster it. But one, I thought you guys would have some insights for us on how we were proposing to cluster, what you guys think there, but also wanting to get any feedback that you have on how you think things are going, if you have any other thoughts on how we need to think about ridership and marketing going forward.
We'll take questions or comments.
Yeah, I've got a comment for marketing goals under super riders. I'm really happy to see encourage advocacy for CTA, because those are our champions. I would love to hear what that has looked like so far.
Yeah, so some of the things that it's looked like, we've done some engagement with some of our sort of super writers to do social media content for us. So we've done some social media content where they have done, they did something on the Regional Day Pass that was promoting the Regional Day Pass. We've done some work to promote actually the Black History Month Venture Card. So we've been targeting some of them to do social content for us. That's been one of the key pieces. The other area that we've been working on, we continue to build out, is we have a newsletter and some other marketing that's more comms, less marketing. That's about what's happening at the system, and especially updating them as we start to approach the fiscal cliff and what the future holds. So making sure that they're up to date and aware of what's happening and communicate that as well. So that's been some of the things that we've been doing. They are our best advocates, and they are the best people to advocate on CTA's behalf for that additional funding to make sure that we can continue to provide the service that they need.
I love it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Could we add it to that email list?
So we'll send you the roster.
Fine. Yeah.
Could you send the personal email address?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
I don't know if it's the best segue, but Molly just slipped in the word fiscal cliff. And speaking of fiscal cliff, we are in budget season, budget prep season now at CTA for the 2026 year. And Molly works very closely with the ADA Advisory Committee. It's one of her here at the agency. And there is a review meeting planned for August. I'll let Molly talk about it, but basically we would like to do a combined meeting with CAB and the ADA Advisory Board for that presentation. Molly, you want to address that?
Yeah, so we have some specific budget items that we want to make sure that we talk through both with the Citizens Advisory Board and our ADA Advisory Board. So the goal was for the CFO, Tom McCone, and myself and a few others to have a joint session or a joint meeting with you all, as well as the ADA Advisory Board, to update you on the budget, get some feedback on your thoughts on the budget, where you'd like to see resources and investments, where you think would really make a difference. So we are going to try to plan that, and we'll work through Georgette to find a time that works for as many people as possible. I'm assuming we're not going to be able to get everybody, but we will do our best to try to accommodate as many folks as possible. But we thought it was a good opportunity for the Citizens Advisory Board and the ADA Advisory Board, who are very clearly engaged, advocates for the riders on what the riders need and what the riders want. And so we wanted you guys to be able to come together, hear the same information, and be able to talk with the staff as a group about the 26 budget and what's happening with the fiscal cliff. So we'll work to find a date, and that will be coming in late August at this point, since it's like July 25th. So we'll give you some time to plan. Any questions on that? Or
That's fantastic. I look forward to that joint briefing conversation.
Yeah. Any other questions on ridership or on customer segmentation?
Oh, this was really wonderful. Thank you so much for the presentation. It was really, I learned a lot in this. And thank you for breaking it down into some more digestible categories. But I think this is really helpful as we kind of move through the system ourselves and just kind of understand what you guys are looking at, and which of these categories we fit into. So this is really.
Did you guys all start pegging yourself to a category on which?
We did.
As I've said, I'm not in the fun category, that's for sure. But no, I appreciate you taking the time and letting us speak with you a little bit about it. If you have other thoughts, Danny, I know you raised some stuff that you saw in other areas that you thought was really successful marketing and successful incentives. Please do not hesitate to send that to our team. We always like to hear what you guys think works, whether it's on other transit agencies or even other companies that works from an incentive, so that we can see if we can make it work at CTA. All right, thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Job. Right.
Okay, next on the agenda is new business. Ms. Greenlee, are there any new business?
There's no official new business, but I would like, I know that there have been informally questions raised about terms.
Mm-hmm.
And we have from our general counsel's office, Attorney David Audley, who's reviewed the bylaws, which you all have also all gotten a copy of, which you probably already had a copy of, but we wanted to make sure you gave you a fresh new copy, who just wants to clarify what is required as far as CAB terms, because the requirement did change with the bylaws, and then kind of where we're at as it relates to moving forward. So I'll turn it over to David.
Good afternoon, everyone. The bylaws state that any of the members are appointed by the CTA board for a period of 2 years. I think all your terms started in June 2023, so that's coming up for renewal. And so the CTA board will open up vacancies and take applications for any new CAB members, voting members and non-voting members. If anyone would like to resign, that resignation is not effective until a new appointee is nominated and awarded that position. Is there any other specific questions?
So how long, so with the CTA board looking to fill vacancies, about how long is that process and what is that process? Is it similar to the process that we had coming on? It was an, application and like vetting and all of that. So
If I can just interject, David, in section 2.02, it clarifies the term of members that members of the CAB shall hold their office until respective successors have been appointed.
Right.
So it kind of begs the board taking on the task of identifying new members.
when you refer to the board, do you mean?
CTA.
Okay. So are they currently in that process?
Not,
So-
they are on the budget. And
Right, there's.
that is what they are. Right.
So because we are in budget season, do you have a general sense of timeline for their, just kind of beginning the process of vetting some new members for this board?
I don't think that it is on their horizon. I would be surprised if it was a conversation that they had before 2026.
Okay, I was gonna say the biggest takeaway is what Georgette cited, that you're in your seats,
Until 2026.
well, unless and until the board appoints new members.
Okay.
And, the board is prioritizing the budget, obviously. So
Understandable.
we will certainly be in communication with you if anything, with regards to the time frame changes. But at this point, unless someone has submitted notice of resignation to our board, will remain in their seats until the process keeps up and getting proposed. And then, of course, I don't think that the board would give the terms of the current CAB before there are new members in the seats. So there's that whole transition.
Okay.
The biggest takeaway is you guys are staying put until either you resign from your seat or until we're engaged in that process of appointing.
Should anyone choose to resign, that seat then would stay vacant until the board has an opportunity to do the process that they need to fill that seat.
Yeah, I would just note, there are quorum issues, and so I understand people have their reasons, but just keep in mind that we would run into quorum issues if we didn't have enough members to convene CAB meetings. So, in the event vacancies would impact quorum, I think that would accelerate, that process. But we currently have up to have you all stay on and continue to review, which is why I'm emphasizing that you all are in your seats on the board.
Be heard and acknowledged. Thank you.
Are there other questions? Thank you, Attorney Audley. Thank you, Attorney Morgan. And Chairperson Raby, there is no additional new business.
Okay. Well, seems like we are all set. Can I have a motion to adjourn today's meeting?
Second.
It's been moved by Peter Henderson, seconded by Sonia Del Rio, that the meeting be adjourned. We'll take a roll call vote. Danielle Stanley.
Yes.
Scott Vanderbilt.
Yes.
Brian McCray.
Yes.
Chairperson Raby. Vice Chairperson Johnson.
Yes.
Peter Henderson.
Yes.
Del Rio.
Yes.
Chairperson Raby, the motion is unanimous. Vote is unanimous. Adjourned.
Okay. Adjourn. Have a good day. All in all.